All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Yeah, always fun to dive into some new material.
Absolutely. And today we are looking at, let's see, Ashtar, Earth's creation, seeding, and ancient history.
Oh, interesting.
Specifically, part two of that book. And yeah, we're going to see what we can pull out of this.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it looks pretty fascinating. There are some really bold claims in here about Earth's past galactic beings, all sorts of stuff. And we're just going to kind of unpack it all and see what
I
resonates.
think that's the best way to approach this kind of material.
No.
Just see what sparks something within you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So right off the bat, we encounter this concept of channeling, and Ashtar describes communicating through Neva, and it's through this pretty intense energy exchange
Right.
that she receives these messages, and it's presented as a way to kind of activate memories within us, like we already hold this knowledge, but it's just kind of buried deep down.
So it's not so much new information, but like a remembering.
Yeah, like a remembering, exactly.
That's fascinating. It's like that idea that we already have all the answers within us. We just need to access them.
Right, right, exactly. So then, okay, what kind of memories are we talking about here? I mean, are we all secretly space travelers or something?
Well, that's where this concept of Earth's seeding comes in.
Okay.
Ashtar suggests that beings from other star systems intentionally populated our planet. And it's not just a random scattering of beings either. They actually categorize souls involved in this process.
Oh, wow.
You've got your native Earth souls, right, the ones who were here from the beginning.
Okay.
You've got souls who migrated from other planets because of something called vibrational shifts.
Vibrational shifts. Okay, now we're getting into some pretty out there stuff.
Right. And then you have souls who came specifically to help Earth evolve. Like they had a mission to assist in our planet's development.
Okay, so that begs the question. Where do we fit in? Which group do we belong to?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what if our connection to Earth is way more complex than we've ever imagined?
Right. Okay, I'm hooked. But what kind of evidence does Ashtar offer for all this? This is a lot to take in without something concrete.
Right. So Ashtar claims this seeding began over 200,000 years ago, with Homo sapiens appearing around 100,000 years ago.
Okay.
And they point to some archaeological sites as evidence of extraterrestrial influence.
Like what? Give us the juicy details.
Well, for example, Ashtar mentions the Egyptian and Mayan pyramids.
Okay, yeah.
They suggest these structures are just way too complex for early humans to have built without outside help.
I mean, I've seen those documentaries too, you know. You do kind of wonder how they pulled that off.
Right, exactly. They also point to the Nazca lines in Peru,
Those giant geoglyphs. Yes.
etched into the desert, and proposed they were landing strips for ancient spacecraft.
Okay, now we're venturing into ancient alien territory. I love it.
It's definitely a fascinating theory. And then there's this other tidbit that Ashtar throws in about a hidden civilization buried under the ice in the Antarctic and Arctic regions.
Wait, a whole civilization under the ice? Come on, that's straight out of a movie.
Right. They describe these beings as having white skin and blue eyes, suggesting they fled galactic wars and are just waiting to be awakened.
Okay, so how do they fit into this whole seeding narrative? Are they connected to the Pleiadians who Ashtar mentioned as like the initial sowers of life on Earth?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, Ashtar doesn't explicitly make that connection in this excerpt, at least not yet. But we do know that they claim humanity has had 5 distinct beginnings, with the current cycle being the 5th.
5 distinct beginnings. Okay, now that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down.
It is. It really makes you wonder, could each of these beginnings be tied to a specific group of beings? Like maybe the Pleiadians were involved in one cycle, this hidden civilization in another.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so maybe Earth is like a testing ground for different iterations of humanity.
That's one way to look at it. But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's switch gears a bit.
Okay.
Ashtar also offers some pretty intriguing interpretations of some familiar stories, like the Garden of Eden.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering about that.
They suggest it's more of a metaphor for Earth before negative interventions, a time of purity and harmony,
So less about a literal fruit and more about a symbolic fall from grace, huh?
Precisely. And what about Adam and Eve themselves? Are they also meant to be metaphorical?
Yeah, I mean, are they like stand-ins for all of humanity or what?
That's exactly what Ashtar says. They represent all men and women of that time. And get this, they emphasize that Eve wasn't created from Adam's rib.
Okay.
Instead, they point to the wholeness of masculine and feminine energies within each individual.
Oh, interesting. So, like, we all have both masculine and feminine energy within us?
Exactly. It challenges traditional interpretations of gender roles
Hmm.
and suggests a more balanced view.
Yeah, that definitely makes you think. But what about the original sin concept? Does Ashtar have a different perspective on that too?
Absolutely. They argue that karma, which is often confused with sin, is not a punishment, but a natural consequence of our choices.
Okay.
They also claim that the idea of sin was instilled to create guilt and control.
So, less about divine judgment and more about understanding the cause and effect of our actions.
Exactly. It shifts the perspective from punishment to a learning experience.
Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. So, does this apply to everyone then? Even figures like Lucifer?
That's where things get really interesting, because Ashtar challenges the traditional portrayal of Lucifer as this purely evil being.
Really?
Yeah. Instead, they present him as a being who simply desired separation from source and wanted to experience physicality.
That's a very different take on Lucifer than what we usually hear. So, wait, he just wanted to, like, branch out and explore new
It
possibilities?
seems that way.
Yeah.
Ashtar seems to be suggesting that this desire for new experiences isn't inherently evil, just a different path of exploration.
Huh. That's a thought-provoking way to look at it. I mean, it makes you wonder if maybe our tendency to label things as either good or evil is a little too simplistic.
Absolutely. It's all much more nuanced than that.
Exactly. And speaking of challenging traditional narratives, Ashtar also has some surprising things to say about Judas.
Oh, yes. Judas.
Yeah.
That's a whole other can of worms we're going to have to open next time.
That's right. Listeners, stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve into the story of Judas, the concept of the Hall of Mirrors, and much more. Welcome back to our deep dive into Ashtar's perspective on Earth's history. Last time, we were talking about some pretty radical reinterpretations of figures like Lucifer and the concept of, evil and all that. But Ashtar also had some pretty interesting things to say about Judas.
Yeah, Judas. Another figure who doesn't exactly have the best reputation.
Right, exactly. So Ashtar claims that the story of Judas, well, it's not quite what it seems.
Right. They say he's actually a great soul who continues to assist humanity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that, the story of his betrayal, well, it's been distorted over time.
Okay, so hold on. Judas isn't the villain he's made out to be. I mean, that's a pretty big departure from the traditional narrative. So what's Ashtar's take then? What was Judas's role in all of this?
Well, they don't reveal all the details, at least not in these excerpts.
Right.
But they do suggest that Judas was part of a much larger plan and that he eventually asked to return to complete his mission.
So maybe not a betrayal in the traditional sense, but like a prearranged role in some kind of bigger, cosmic play.
Exactly. It's a really interesting concept, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely makes you think. So Ashtar also mentioned this Hall of Mirrors thing. What's that all about?
Right, the Hall of Mirrors. It's described as a place where we confront our own shadows, I guess you could say, and we recognize our true nature.
Okay, but is this a literal place or more of a, a symbolic representation of something?
I think it's safe to say it's more symbolic. It's about inner work and self-discovery.
So facing our fears, our insecurities, all the stuff we tend to hide from, even from ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Ashtar suggests that this process, it can be pretty unsettling,
Oh, I bet.
but it ultimately leads to healing and letting go of, limiting beliefs.
That makes sense. It's like the only way out is through, right? Sometimes we need to face the darkness to find the light.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And, it makes me wonder how this Hall of Mirrors idea ties into the larger narrative,
Yeah.
Earth's history, these different soul groups that Ashtar talks about.
Yeah, good point. Like, what's the connection there?
Maybe confronting our shadows, it's a necessary step in,
Hmm.
unlocking those deeper memories that Ashtar mentioned, those memories of, our soul's journey, our connection to these other civilizations.
So maybe it's about like shedding old layers of ourselves, the stuff that's holding us back so we can become more aligned with our, our true nature, our purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And, speaking of other civilizations, in part 1, Ashtar briefly mentioned that civilization hidden under the ice.
Right.
And they also talked about the Pleiadians as the initial sowers of life on Earth.
Yeah, I remember that. So do they like provide any more details about those civilizations? I'm really curious to hear more about, especially about the one under the ice.
Unfortunately, the excerpts we're looking at, they don't really go into much detail about those specific civilizations.
Ah, bummer.
But they do touch on this idea of a missing link in human development.
Oh, missing link, huh?
Yeah. And they suggest that this link, well, it's contact with galactic beings.
Okay, so maybe that's where the Pleiadians come in. They're the missing piece of the puzzle in understanding, how we evolved.
It's definitely a possibility. And if we consider Ashtar's claim that humanity has had 5 distinct beginnings, well, maybe each beginning is connected to a specific group of extraterrestrial beings.
Ooh, that's a pretty wild idea. So, like, each cycle of humanity is influenced by a different galactic lineage. It's like cosmicancestry.com or something.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, something like that.
But, okay, so if this is our fifth cycle, what happened to the previous four? Did they not turn out so well?
Well, Ashtar doesn't really go into specifics about what caused the previous cycles to end,
Hmm.
but they do emphasize that this current cycle, the fifth one, it has the potential um, to reach a harmonious conclusion.
Okay, so there's hope for us yet.
Right. But it makes you wonder, what makes this cycle different? Why might we succeed where others failed?
Right, yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Maybe it's this growing awareness of our interconnectedness, this shift towards personal responsibility and questioning the narratives that we've been told.
Yeah, maybe we're finally waking up to the bigger picture.
Exactly. Perhaps this time around we have a better understanding of the forces at play, both within ourselves and on a cosmic level.
So it's not about avoiding challenges or conflicts, but about, learning how to navigate them in a more constructive way.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. If we can approach those challenges from a place of awareness and compassion, well, maybe we can break free from those destructive patterns and create a different outcome.
Right, exactly. It's not about creating some perfect utopia, but about learning and evolving together.
Right. Recognizing that we're all in this together,
Yeah.
part of this grand cosmic dance.
I love that analogy. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's really sticking with you? What's resonating the most from all of this?
For me, it's this idea that we're not just passive observers in all of this grand cosmic drama.
Hmm.
We're active participants.
Yeah, I feel that too. It's empowering, but also kind of daunting, like if we have the power to create a more harmonious reality, well, then we also have the responsibility to use that power wisely.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect segue into our final part where we'll really explore what all of this means for us in the here and now. How do we take all of this and make it practical?
Right, exactly. Stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back with the final part of our deep dive into Ashtar's claims. Welcome back to our deep dive. So we've spent quite a bit of time now kind of going through these really big ideas about Earth's history and the origins of souls and this whole idea that humanity is in its fifth cycle and it could actually end harmoniously, unlike the others.
Right. It's a lot to process.
It is. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what all this means for us, in the here and now.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part. Like, how do we actually apply this knowledge to our lives?
Right, exactly. Because it's not just about like uncovering these ancient secrets. It's also about, discovering something about ourselves in the process.
Absolutely. Ashtar keeps emphasizing this idea of self-awareness and personal responsibility, right? It's about recognizing that we're not just physical beings, but also energetic and spiritual beings with a huge potential for growth and transformation.
Okay, so connecting with that deeper part of ourselves, the part that's, connected to this larger like cosmic web of energy and consciousness. But what does that actually look like? Practically speaking, is it about meditation, energy work? Like, how do we do that?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. Ashtar doesn't really give us a step-by-step guide or anything,
Right.
but they do emphasize the importance of aligning our thoughts, emotions, and actions with our highest aspirations. Like making choices that reflect our true nature and contribute to a more harmonious reality.
Okay, so it's not just about thinking positive thoughts, it's about actually like embodying those thoughts in our actions and our interactions with the world.
Exactly. It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense, but it also seems, well, kind of daunting. Like, how do we even begin to make that kind of shift?
I think it starts with awareness. Just recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to the world. That in itself is a huge step. We can choose to react from a place of fear, or we can choose to respond from a place of love and understanding.
So becoming more conscious of our choices, recognizing the power that we have to shape our reality, both individually and collectively.
Yeah, exactly. It's both empowering and a little bit scary at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but it's also, like you said, incredibly empowering to realize that we're not just, helpless pawns in some cosmic game. We actually have agency.
Right. We have the power to create change.
Exactly. And this kind of ties back to Ashtar's claim that this fifth cycle of humanity, it has the potential for a harmonious conclusion, right? Maybe it's this growing awareness, this willingness to look inward and actually do the work that sets this cycle apart from the previous ones.
Yeah, maybe this time we're finally ready to learn from the mistakes of the past.
Right. And maybe it's not about avoiding challenges or conflicts altogether, but it's about how we choose to navigate them.
Exactly. If we can approach those challenges from a place of awareness and compassion, then maybe we can break free from those destructive patterns that have, plagued humanity for so long.
And create something new, something better.
Exactly. It's not about, creating some perfect utopia where everything is rainbows and butterflies. It's about learning and evolving together, recognizing that we're all in this together.
I love that. We're all in this together. We're all part of this grand cosmic dance.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the most important takeaway? Like, what's the one thing you really want listeners to remember from all of this?
If I could leave listeners with just one thought, it would be to not be afraid to question things. Don't be afraid to question the narratives that you've been told, to explore new ideas and to trust your own intuition. Ashtar's messages, they offer one perspective on a vast and complex reality. But ultimately, it's up to each of us to discern what resonates with us and to embark on our own journey of discovery.
Beautifully said. And listeners, remember, the exploration doesn't end here. Keep asking questions, keep seeking knowledge, and keep those minds open to the infinite possibilities that exist, both within you and beyond.
It's an amazing universe out there.
It is. It really is. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride, everyone. And until next time, keep diving